Welcome back to the Cybersock podcast with me, Ryan.
And me, Adam.
Adam, how has your week been? It's been a hard week for me.
It has been a hard week. We're continuing on this project that we started. And it's really taken it out of me, Ryan. It's really taken it out of me in ways I didn't expect.
What I'm finding, well, I already knew this, but it's definitely hard to work with other people compared to when I think about projects I've worked on my own. Very easy. And I understand, and we've been through these reasons before, but it's a hard experience to go through, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think a lot of the meetings really take it out of me. I find myself not doing a lot of development work and doing a lot of people
Meetings.
work. Just like talking to people, trying to get things done.
Yeah, it's hard. You have to interact with people all the time. I think it is your individual responsibility to make working with you as easy as possible.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I had a discussion with someone, and I was talking about this because we do a lot of decision by committee. And there was a good phrase that coined by, I believe, Google, that collaboration does not mean democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite like that. We've democratized most of the decision-making process. And I think that has harmed it. I think if we'd have just had someone to lead, it would have been easier.
So we've been working a lot on the project. We've been a bit behind with the podcast.
Yep.
Let's have a bit of fun, Adam.
Oh, I'm so down for this, Ryan.
This is a surprise for Adam. He doesn't know what I'm about to do. This is an experimental format. I don't know if it will work, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen with you, but obviously no one else will be able to see this. It's just you.
So should I describe what I'm seeing in front of me now?
You describe what you're seeing on my screen.
So what I'm seeing is a tier list, much like you see in the popular YouTube videos.
Yes.
With ranks from S to D in the order S, A, B, C, D. Mm-hmm. And below that, some frameworks.
Yes.
Not specifically front end, but back end and front end.
Yes. So I was thinking, Adam, let's rank some frameworks. I've actually wanted to talk about frameworks with you for a long time in depth. Do you notice anything in particular about the frameworks I've chosen to include here?
Android SDK is an interesting inclusion.
I was debating whether that was going to make it onto the list. Okay. I mean, we've got other things on here. React and Vue, I don't think you consider them frameworks. You consider them front-end libraries, I believe.
Do you? I thought they were called frameworks, but I don't know.
There is a debate, I think, in the software engineering community of if they're frameworks or libraries. But anyway, we've got a few frameworks / libraries / technologies, whatever you want to call them here, decided on this set of things that we have used in our time at the NSA, the National Software Academy.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be fun to rank them to see what our favourites were from the last 3 years. So I've kind of organised them in a sort of order that we've used them. So we're going to start with Flask. So what are your thoughts on Flask as a framework?
So the first real language I ever did was Python back in secondary school. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for it.
Is Flask something you were using back then?
No.
No. You were just using Python, yeah.
Yeah, I used that, and I used Pygame for my A-level project in which I created like a Pac-Man clone. It was the worst experience I've ever had developing anything.
Isn't that what you say after any project?
No, that stands out. That is broken in so many ways. But Flask, I don't know if I would actually use it for a real...
I can see why you might use Flask, because if you've learned Python, it's kind of the natural next step to developing your first API, I guess, right? And that's what it was for us at the NSA. It was the first framework that we used.
Yeah, I think the Flask side of it wasn't particularly painful. The painful side of it, and I can't remember the name, was the client-side rendering of it. Do you remember what that was called?
I cannot remember the name either, but I do remember it being painful.
That was so awful.
I think that one of my problems with Flask, it wasn't, I guess, necessarily a problem with Flask, but I guess it's a problem that Flask allows this, is you don't really get to have any good architecture, I find, with Flask. We had all of our server stuff in one app.py file.
Yes. Yeah,
Everything for the server was in that one file, which is absolutely insane.
Possibly due to our naivety at the time.
Yes, yeah.
The templating engine in Flask is called Ginger.
Right, okay, Ginger. Yes, I remember having a few problems with that.
A lot of curly braces.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's nice that we started with Flask.
Easy to start, isn't it?
It's easy to start, and also we didn't ruin it we didn't know enough at the time, but it's not like it's used in real life. So we moved on to when we learnt more about web development, and we kind of left Flask behind as its own mistake in the past.
Yes. So where do you think you'd rank it on this list then?
Well, I wouldn't even use it for like quick web development anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing. I wouldn't either. Are we thinking C, or do we want to go all the way down to D, do you think?
I think we need to leave space for things that I like. I mean, I'm happy with it going up to a B, because I think there are worse things than it. I think keep it at a C.
Good, that's the first one done. So next we've got Spring Boot. We started learning this in our second year, or the Spring framework. The Java framework.
It does not have a soft space in my heart. I can only remember pain from this. It's doing a backend in Java. It seems counterintuitive.
One thing I remember a lot about using Spring was that whenever you made a change on the server, you had to stop, recompile, and start the server again. That was a painful process to go through every time you made a tiny change.
Yeah, and the architecture of having to object orientate all your code, I don't think makes sense. I think there's a lot of helper classes. I enjoy a bit of OOP when it's required. I don't enjoy it when it's not required.
I think it really takes OOP to the next level, doesn't it? We had like services, implementations, interfaces. Yeah. We had like 4 files that were basically doing the same thing.
It was so complicated to achieve what is quite simple in any other framework. And it just feels bloated to use it.
Yes. One thing I found with Spring, there were certain things that I liked learning about it. This was my introduction to things like dependency injection, inversion of control, and I really liked learning about these kind of framework principles in depth. And they were introduced to me through Spring, and then I learned them through Spring.
We did a lot of design patterns within them.
Yes, so it is a good framework to use to get a proper understanding of how to develop web applications, I feel.
Yeah, well, actually, it's good at large scale applications, is what it's like good at teaching you for. I think compared to Flask, I would probably more readily use it for a production.
Yeah, I would have to agree, even though that makes you really sad to say. I would rather use Spring. I've just found it very painful for all the reasons we've just listed, that we had like so many files that would basically do the same thing, really over complex in how we designed it. Maybe that's a fault on us and not Spring, but it felt like a Spring problem to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's a sensible option for like developing something quickly.
I think it's not particularly modern either. It's a very old framework anyway.
Yeah.
Which does its benefits. It means it's very mature. There's a lot of resources out there for it. But I kind of feel like it's lagging behind with some of the newer, more modern frameworks that are out there today.
Yeah, compared to Laravel particularly.
I mean, you know my opinion. Laravel is leaps and bounds beyond Spring.
But it is well used within, I think, the banking sector when they have huge services to manage. And I can understand it then. I can understand the need for all that complexity when there is so much relying on this working. If you did like a banking API in Flask,
yes,
that would be insane.
This is quite interesting because you and me are really thinking about this more from the developer kind of perspective. Because I know, and you will probably agree with me, I'm not particularly interested if a framework is like milliseconds faster than another one. I am interested in my developer experience of using that framework. So where are we thinking this goes in our list?
I see you're hovering near the B column.
I'm kind of feeling between B and C.
I would say a C. I think it's more production useful than Flask, but it hurts me.
So should we put it in C in front of Flask, so it's a better framework than Flask?
I see, okay.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
So this is where we start to veer away a bit into just random technologies that Ryan's chosen. Android SDK.
I was only like vaguely aware of it because I attended lectures about it. My opinion is I didn't want to use it because it was using Java again, and we kind of done a lot of Java, and it doesn't excite me.
So for anyone who's not aware, we had a module where we could use basically anything we wanted to make an app. So we could use either like the Android SDK, or Adam used Flutter, which we're going to talk about after Android.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used Android. It was very similar to like the Java kind of stuff we'd done before. And I just used it because I just found that it was going to be easier for me than learning something else again, because I'm not particularly interested in Android app development personally.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of better options, thinking along the lines of progressive web apps and stuff. You can just package a website into an app these days. I don't think you need to do a full-blown kind of thing for it, you know?
Yeah, that's true. The things I really didn't like about it was how Android is split up into all these different versions, and there's dependency problems, and this version of Android works with these aspects of the library and this one doesn't, and you've got to use certain things, and that just, the complexity of that needed to be hidden from me.
The versioning kind of system was just insane to me when I was making an Android app. I'd have certain features that wouldn't work in older versions. I had to do like kind of workarounds for them. I just seem to remember everything being really hard.
Yeah, and I don't think it benefited from being on top of Java again too much. I mean, it's much better than doing it in Spring Boot. Java is a better fit for Android than web dev. I want to talk a lot about my comparisons with Flutter, and I think that's coming in a bit.
I'm wondering, shall we put this right at the bottom?
It's where I'd put it.
I don't think I would ever use it again. I hated it, actually. I'm going to put it in D.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right one.
So then you used Flutter instead. So what were your experiences like with that?
I've so much love for Flutter. Your discussion on like progressive web apps, Flutter is essentially a progressive web app creator. You create something on Flutter, it works on Android, it works on iOS, it works on web applications on your desktop. It's using a language called Dart, which is, I believe, all a Google ecosystem. The documentation is wonderful. It uses Code Labs.
Code Labs, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so when you're like looking through the documentation and learning parts of it, it has a really excellent way to teach it to you. The library support is incredible. There's so many different libraries that are available. So I had a Tinder-like card swiping element to it.
Oh.
And there was a library that just imported that. I assume in the Android SDK, you'd have to do that from scratch and you'd hate yourself.
I don't know. I really can't remember much from that time in my life.
I really, really enjoyed development with Flutter, and Flutter would make me want to develop more apps. For that reason, because I just enjoy development so much.
I've never used Flutter. All I know from Flutter is what I've learned from you. So I'm putting this up to you where you want to place it.
I would give it an A.
Not an S?
No, I wouldn't go that far. When I was developing with this, I was developing just after the release of version 3 or version 2 maybe, and it just completely changed the way it did a lot of things.
I remember that happening to you, actually, because it's really hard when something new like that releases and there's not many resources available for it.
Yeah.
So we're putting that in A, right?
Yeah, I think it's very solid. I would recommend people try it out because I did have a good fun time with it, but yeah.
So next on our list, we've got Node.
I think Node, for me, it's a very hands-off framework.
Really? I feel like Node is so hands-on.
Oh, I'm thinking the framework is hands-off you.
Oh, hands-off you. Okay.
Yes.
Right, okay. I was thinking the other way around, in that with Node, you need to be very hands-on. One thing I really like about Node is its simplicity. It's so simple in that it doesn't have a lot of dependencies. It doesn't really handle very much on its own, right? You'd use it with like a HTTP server such as Express, or newer options are available. And that's basically it, you know? You can just add things as you need them. I do quite enjoy that simplicity of it, and you can kind of craft something to be exactly how you need it to be.
Yeah, I know. I like the support of, because it's just so widely used. There's infinite libraries to do almost anything, and there are problems that occur from that.
Yes.
With a huge amount of dependencies and having to manage those.
So for all the reasons I just mentioned of its simplicity, its freedom, if you will, those are also reasons that I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like that you get so much freedom. And this is an issue that I brought up with you, actually, relating to the project we're working on right now. Node gives us so much freedom that we are having issues as a team because each of us is implementing various libraries and things to do certain things, that if we were using another framework such as Laravel, this would all be accounted for you out of the box. We wouldn't be making these kind of choices as we go along.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I also don't like having to choose all these libraries and having to think about all the different things that are available to you. I kind of want a framework that chooses these things for me. Abstracted away from me, all I want to do is business logic and nothing else. I don't want to be worrying about libraries. That's not the life I want to live, Adam.
No, I agree. I agree. I don't know if I'm going to surprise you here of where I'm going to place this, but it's a B tier.
Well, you have shocked me here, Adam, because for me it's an A tier.
Is it?
Yeah, I like it. I like that it's simple, and I can definitely see, this is a really solid framework for you to use in 2022. It's got a strong community, lots of resources. It's a very good framework to use.
I think Flutter is better.
Do you? Let's put in B. So now we come to Ryan's favourite framework, Laravel. Adam, I will accept nothing less than S tier for this.
Okay, talk about why you like it then.
I love everything about Laravel. There is almost nothing that I dislike about it. I think it's the perfect framework. Adam, retort.
So it is actually very the opposite of Node in a lot of the ways we discussed. It does a lot for you. It's got a lot of defaults.
Yes, it follows the principle of convention over configuration, which is kind of a Rails philosophy, which I love. I do not want to configure everything, which is kind of more the Node philosophy. You configure everything as you go along. I don't like that. Conventions for me. I want to follow best practices that are established by the maintainers or people who know more than me.
Yeah, I understand that. And I did some projects with Rails just for fun. And I really liked the way that worked. It all just happened. And I think it works really well for your experience with it, which is you are the creator of it. You see it through the whole process. My experience of it as like something that I'm dropped into it is an existing project that's working in Laravel. The amount of convention and magic kind of stuff that it uses is poorly self-documenting. A lot of the time I looked at it and thought, what is this? How does this work? Why is this doing it? And those were the problems I had with it compared to Node, when everything is laid out in the code because it has to be, right?
Which is potentially harder because for me, if I hop onto another Laravel project, it has all these conventions that I already know.
Yeah, I suppose I was someone who was brand new to Laravel. I'd never seen it before. Brand new to PHP. So there was a lot of catching up. I still feel that there's a lot of times when I would have to get someone in to look at what I was looking at. And the answer would be, oh yes, it does this because it just magic. It does it and it works, as an example.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of magic behind Laravel, which is what I like. It abstracts a lot away from you, but I can definitely see that at times then that becomes problematic because you want to know how something works and how it's implemented, especially when you come across errors and stuff. And it's just a really nice framework. It's got a really nice ecosystem surrounding it. There's a lot of packages which are maintained by Laravel. Laravel Horizon, which is like a queue management package. Laravel Spark, which is built for SaaS apps to easily integrate with Stripe or Paddle. It's got such a big ecosystem around it and a really good community as well.
Yeah, I really enjoy that about it. I enjoy just like the concept of Laravel Vapor, and it's just such a one-button sorted.
So this is kind of the more commercial side to Laravel rather than its open source side, where it has these products like Laravel Vapor, which is for serverless hosting, Laravel Forge, which is for more server full hosting. It has a real ecosystem around it, which I have not seen with any other framework. I don't think anything like it exists, really.
It's a bit like the Apple of the development world. That it's quite a walled garden.
Yes.
Everything works together and it works all very nicely, but that someone is making decisions on how things should work.
Mm-hmm. That's the best description I think I've heard of it. I do come across some issues. So when I was comparing it with Node and its simplicity, so Laravel in that way is not simple. It has a lot of dependencies. It has a lot of things you have to install. A little bit hard to get up and running for the first time. So I can definitely see issues with it. Adam, what are you thinking after that discussion?
I would put it as an A.
I would also put it as an A, but I'd put it above Flutter.
No, I think that's fine.
So we're on to the last two now. We've got React and Vue. And I think we can compare these kind of intermingled because they're very similar, right?
I have much more experience in Vue than React.
Yes, me too.
I really like Vue. I don't know if I should reveal this now, but I think Vue is S tier.
Really? I think for me, Vue would be S tier. I'm the same as Adam. I do love Vue. I've got quite a lot of experience in using Vue. But for me, Vue becomes A because of the issues that came about with the kind of migration to Vue 3.
I understand that, but I think it had to happen.
Do you think?
I think if there were more issues like that, if this was a regular occurrence, then it would be problematic. But it's not like Flutter in that it's more mature than Flutter is. I think it has a wider community.
There was a lot of issues with Vue for me personally when I was working on my last project, and Vue 3 was fairly new. So there was a lot of plugins and libraries for Vue that would only work on the old version of Vue, not on this new Vue 3 version.
Yeah.
And that was problematic for me. I was using some libraries and plugins for Vue that were only a few weeks old in like their alpha versions. And that's a bit insane to be using something so brand new.
Yeah, I understand.
Are you going to introduce these brand new libraries into a production environment?
I think we've talked a lot about the negatives of Vue, though, and that's quite a small negative compared to the vast array of positives. Compared to React, I think, is how I'd have to describe them.
So me and Adam worked on a project one summer, a research project with the university, and we used React for that. And I didn't have the worst experience. There were definitely things that I didn't like about it. Fast forward to now, and React has completely changed. What we were doing back then is now considered legacy.
Yeah, and so in many ways it suffers from the same kind of problems as Vue. And it's just changing rapidly.
Yes, and I think such is the way with these front-end libraries and frameworks. They change so quickly, and you have to keep up with them.
Yeah, I think my main problems with React is just looking at it. Just the code looks uglier, more complex. The style of HTML in JavaScript, which is React's mantra, doesn't work with me mentally as well as the Vue idea of putting JavaScript in the HTML, which I think is much nicer.
Yes. I think Vue has a nice separation of concerns, if you will, compared to React, which is a bit more intermingled, I find. These are just my opinions. But so where are we thinking we want to place these, Adam?
I think, well, let's start with React. It's the first one.
I would
B?
put as a B, absolutely. Behind Node?
Yes, behind Node.
Behind Node. Vue.
I'm sticking to my guns on a Vue S tier.
Vue S.
Out of everything we've got here, it's the best.
Do you know, I really enjoyed the Chrome extension for Vue.
Yeah, that's another thing we've not discussed.
So because of that, I would put it in S.
It's nice to have an S tier in the list, I think.
Yes. So there's our full list done.
So at the start, we've got Vue, S tier, then we've got A, Laravel, and then Flutter, both very different frameworks. B tier, we've got Node.js and React. A stack that a lot of people enjoy, Node.js and React.
It's a good, solid stack to use as well. Nothing wrong with it.
Then below that, we get to the things with some things wrong with them. The C tier, Spring Boot and Flask, both of which I don't think either of us would want to use in the future.
Nope.
For different reasons. And then D tier is Android SDK.
That's our final list then, Adam. I hope you enjoyed this more experimental format today.
Let us know your thoughts and tweet us at
CU Cybersock on Twitter. I hope, Adam, you had fun doing this today.
I had so much fun, Ryan. I really enjoyed this. This was such a surprise to me. I loved it.
Thought you needed a little happy surprise today.
Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.